Good evening. My name is Laurent Brooks. I'm the Associate Curator of Modern and Contemporary Collections here at the Getty Research Institute. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Creative Impulse, Jae Jarrell and Sylvia Snowden in Conversation. This conversation is an outgrowth of the Getty's African American Art History Initiative, an ambitious program to establish the Getty Research Institute as a major center for the study of African American art history. And in addition to acquiring archives and related original sources, the initiative will conduct oral histories of notable African American artists, scholars, critics, collectors, and art dealers, and conduct original research, host other scholars' projects, mount exhibitions, publish books, and form partnerships with other institutions to work toward shared goals. Importantly, as we undertake these activities, we will share the efforts of our research with you, our public audience, and thank you for everyone who came today despite the fires. I know that really affects the way people get around here, so thank you for attending today. And through events such as tonight's public conversation. I would like to take the time to thank Jae Jarrell and Sylvia Snowden for being here. And thank you, Bridget Cooks, for moderating this important conversation. And a special thank you as well to the initiative's advisory committee who are here with us today. Thank you, everybody. And thank you again to the audience for joining us on this very special occasion, and to our AV and events teams who work behind the scenes to make this event possible. And a special thank you is due to Chelsea Larkin for all of her efforts. Thank you. Before I turn things over to Bridget, please take a moment to check your cell phones and make sure they are turned off or silenced. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Bridget Cooks, Associate Professor at the University of California, Irvine, in the Departments of African American Studies and Art History. She is the author and editor of numerous books, including Exhibiting Blackness, African Americans, and the American Art Museum in 2001, which was awarded the inaugural James A. Porter and David C. Driscoll Book Award in African American Art History in 2013. She's also the author of a historical perspective of African Americans in 2009 and The Art of Richard Mayhew in 2009. She is also a valued member of the initiative's advisory committee. Please join me in welcoming Bridget, who will introduce Jae Jarrell and Sylvia Snowden. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, I'm very happy to see you. I'm very happy to be here. And I've been looking forward to this, so welcome. I just want to introduce our two esteemed guests who are both incredible and accomplished artists and human beings, and it's been my pleasure to be in conversation with them on the occasion of leading up to this conversation. So I'm first going to introduce Jae Jarrell. Jae Jarrell is an internationally exhibited American artist and fashion designer. Raised in Cleveland, Ohio, she was trained as a classical musician and master sewer. She studied education, art, and fashion design at Bowling Green State University, the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and Howard University, where she completed her BFA and graduate studies. Jarrell has been an important contributor to the Black arts movement for the past 5 decades as a member of AfriCOBRA, the acronym for African Commune of Bad Relevant Artists, the organization she co-founded in 1968. Jarrell is most well known for her iconic wearable artworks that interpret the core ideas of the group. She expands on those ideas, developing abstract, innovative methods of translating Black positivity into fashion objects in her ongoing practice. Jarrell's art has been featured in museum and gallery exhibitions over the past several decades, most recently in the solo exhibition at the York University Art Gallery, which is part of the Toronto Biennial. AfriCOBRA Nation Time up currently at the 2019 Venice Biennale. Soul of a Nation, Art in the Age of Black Power, organized by the Tate in London and currently traveling throughout the United States. It opens at the De Young next month. AfriCOBRA, Messages to the People at the Museum of Contemporary Art, North Miami. We Wanted a Revolution, Black Radical Women, 1965 to 1985, organized in 2017 by the Brooklyn Museum in New York. And the exhibition Witness, about art of the civil rights movement, which we are grateful to Kelly Jones, who's here for curating that exhibition. So let's just clap for Jae before I go on.
Thank you.
So I'd like to introduce Sylvia Snowden. Sylvia Snowden received a scholarship and diploma from Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture in Skowhegan, Maine, where she studied with Alex Katz and Ben Shahn. She also earned a certificate from Le Grand Chaumier in Paris and a Bachelor of Arts and Masters of Fine Arts from Howard University. While attending Howard, she studied with Lila Asher, David C. Driscoll, Lois Maylou Jones, James A. Porter, and James Lesesne Wells. Snowden has held teaching positions at Howard University, Yale University, Cornell University, and the University of Sydney, Australia. She has served as an artist in residence, panelist, visiting artist, lecturer, instructor, and curator in universities, galleries, and art schools in the United States, as well as internationally, including Chile, the Netherlands, Ethiopia, the Bahamas, Mexico, Italy, and Japan. Snowden has exhibited widely at institutions such as the Corcoran Gallery of Art, the National Museum of Women in the Arts, Montclair Art Museum, the Baltimore Museum of Art, the Phillips Collection, the National Archives for Black Women's History, and the American University Museum at Katzen Art Center. So again, let's welcome our two esteemed guests.
Great.
Okay, so thank you both for coming. And
Thank
again,
you.
I just adore both of you, just to start. It's a real privilege and pleasure to talk to you. So I'm so glad you made this journey from home where you were comfortable to come all the way out to hot California. So the title of our conversation is The Creative Impulse. And so I just wanted to start there. The creative impulse is something that both of you have spent a lifetime expressing. And so Jae, when did you realize that you had the creative impulse?
From the moment I was given music lessons, and I decided to sort of compose a little something. And at the time, I was sort of fascinated that I could make up things and be impressed by some sounds I heard. And Carol, my older sister, was in the kitchen with Mother, and Mother was getting ready for a party, and she had Carol cutting the butter in little pats. And she was scolding her because we were uneven and we were having a luncheon. And I was playing in there, and then I remember Duncha music. I called Duncha, stride piano, and I was trying to create something, so I made up this thing going downtown to Sally Annie's, cut that butter good. And Sally Annie was the name that Mother called Salvation Army, okay? So she would code it that way, and so I played Duncha, Duncha, and going downtown to Sally Annie's, cut that butter good. And that was my first composed piece, and I felt
And so, Jade, did people in your family or outside of your family encourage you when you realized you were good at making things?
Yeah, because they became the target of my making. So, clothespins had no value on clotheslines. They should be dressed up and made to hold handkerchiefs, so that I had a gift for Aunt Alice and something for Aunt Ethel that they would appreciate, because they didn't have children, and they were subject to be the target of any one of my gifts.
Okay. And Sylvia Snowden, can you tell us when you realized you had the creative impulse, and were there people that encouraged your gifts?
No, I don't know the answer to
You know
that.
what? Let's use the
Oh, I'm
mic
so
so
sorry.
that-
I'm so sorry. What happened is that, can you hear now? Yes. Okay. What happened is that when I was very young, my parents gave me watercolor, and we used watercolor. My brother, when I say we, I mean my brother and me. So I've been painting for a long time, a very long time. You know, as parents do, when they're going away, the children have to be entertained. You have to find a way, and paint was the way that my parents made sure that my brother and I were entertained. So we did a lot of watercolors. We also did coloring books. And my mother and my parents realized that that was nothing but following a shape and a line, and that was not going to do, particularly my mother. And so my mother said, no, just this to follow your own instinct and to use paint, not the coloring book. Mm-hmm. And so I've been painting for a long time, but I don't call myself, I don't know about this creative impulse. I don't,
Okay.
you know, I don't.
That's all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Sylvia, yeah.
But I don't, I say I started painting when I graduated from Howard. You know,
Okay.
that's when I became a professional artist. All the rest of the time was, and I'm still learning, but all the rest of the time was designed specifically to learn specific tasks. And so after I graduated, that's when I became a professional painter.
Can you talk to us a bit about the experience at Howard? What was it about Howard? Why did you choose Howard? What did you learn there? Who encouraged you?
My parents encouraged me. I went to.
I'm going to ask you to use the mic.
Oh, I'm
again.
so
That's
sorry.
Right. They want to hear what you have to say.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The Howard University, for me, represented a direction that my life would take forever. The people that I studied with, James Porter, as you mentioned, David Driscoll, who is still influential in my life, Lois Maylou Jones, and if all of these people, and Lila Asher, those two people are alive. The rest are deceased, but they would still have an influence in my life. And their guidance, and there a lot of, I had those were good teachers, and I looked up to them because not only could they teach, but they kept up their own craft or their own art, whatever word you would choose to use, which is difficult to do, very difficult to work and create too. But they both did it. They did both. I'm sorry, and they showed and they exhibited, but what they did was to impart their love of art to the student. And they taught you that choosing art is something of a responsibility. It's not a fly-by-night thing that you decide to do for a minute. This is something that you dedicate yourself to doing the best that you can do. There are things that they taught me that I still use today when I teach students. Mm-hmm. They are. I'm really glad to have that experience. Really glad. Before I went to Howard, you know, as parents do, my father asked me, said, well, you know, what is it that you want to do with your life? What is it? Tell me about this. So I said, I wanted to be an artist. My father said, oh, baby, I don't know about the money there. Don't know about that. But at any rate, the point is that they still encouraged me. They encouraged me, and they supported me. And through their hard work, they still support me in buying paint, and they're both dead. You know, and I mean, my parents took me wherever I went, from Skowhegan. My parents would go up to Skowhegan and bring back all the paintings on the top of the car. Do you know? I mean, they were extremely supportive. Very, very good parents. Very good parents.
Jae, were there any artists that you knew growing up that you could model yourself after that were intriguing to you, that maybe encouraged you to go into this work?
My brother, who was 5 years older than I, was the first artist I met. And he went to the Cleveland School of Art to take Saturday classes, and he was always employed to do, not employed, but, you know, pursued to do the backdrops for plays at my elementary school and junior high school. I just thought he was genius. And he became an artist, a portrait artist, and traveled all over the U.S. In fact, this dude walked from California to New York State, and painting all along the way, portraits. And
Wait a minute. You said he walked?
walked.
Okay.
And I mean, this is like not even 20 years ago.
What's his first name?
Leonard Johnson. He goes by Le John.
Okay.
And I did the last 5 miles with him to Coney Island. We hang tough, you know, and so he believes, and he started off from some area that was an artist reserve, and just made a pledge that he was going to do that. And he had been a portrait artist in several years, and then he decided about 20 years ago that he did this, and he is now 89.
Wow, that's incredible. I didn't know that. So I would like to talk about materials with both of you. So I'm going to start showing some of your work. This is one of Jae's iconic works, and I'm wondering, hoping that you'll tell us a bit about why, Jae, you chose fabric and sewing as an expressive form.
My grandfather was a tailor, and so all of his his children knew something about the sewing skills and were willing to share what they knew with their nieces, nephews, tell them about what the grandfather used to do. He was in Cambridge, and sewed the suits of the college professors at Harvard. And he and his brother were both tailors. At one point, his name was Robert S. Koiner, Koiner. And the brothers worked together for years, and then at some point they fell out for some reason, you know how family can do sometimes, and then one of them changed their name to Koiner and separated from the other, and they went on with their profession, and separately. But my aunts and my mother were always encouraging about the elements of fine dress, of fine workmanship, and Mother used to take you into places where she might see garments, and she would, when Mother was saying something that was impactful, she would whisper, and she would say, just look at these stitches. Just look at this workmanship. This, I want you to be able to recognize well-done projects and the elements that are fine buttonholes and good edging. This is fine dress. You must recognize that when you see it. So that might be in the junk shop where she went and pilled up a collar where there was something that was very interesting. But she always made you aware of fine workmanship and to want to do something fine.
So, Jay, in 1964, you opened your first store, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Jay of Hyde Park. Would you tell us about that?
Well, I like to share that there was something that brought us to this point. In 1963, I did a debut show. And at that time, I called it African Safari. And it was at a time when there was decolonizing of the European countries that had African communes that they had really guided and shared and directed or whatever in Africa. So there was this sense of their cutting loose of that measurement of guidance. And so I was impressed by that, thinking that it should influence creative people to focus on African dress as a inspiration. And so I had African Safari and gained a great deal of attention from it in Chicago and took the cover of the Defender with my garments and the models that were wearing the frocks. And so
Jay, what did that work look like, the African Safari show?
you tended to I used fabrics that might have dictated that kind of element, and I used shapes and forms that were expressed in that manner. Mm-hmm. But for the Chicago wearing apparel, so that I had Chicago designers the Chicago models that were known to entertain for colleges, for churches, because our models were not given the opportunity to model for department stores and fine garment projects. So they had to find their own designer to put their wardrobe together so they could market themselves as fine dress people and be able to make you have an entertaining project. Mm-hmm. And when I did Fashion Safari, the element was in shapes, forms that might be influenced by African nations without being very, very distinct. So what I did in order to give it a sense of power is I had musicians who were African musicians that formed a combo and performed for us. I had singers, African-American singers that were formed their training at Columbia College of Music, and a jazz combo to accompany the models when they did the runway. And it was just a celebration of Blackness, reaching back to heritage and projecting how you can get a fresh look, give a fresh image. And it was a delightful show. And I, at that point, decided that I was going to quit my job, and at some time down the line, I would have a shop. But in the meanwhile, Ebony Fashion Fair recruiter was there that I invited, and I was given the opportunity to do a garment for the upcoming show that fall. And that was the beginning of my recognition for a powerful kind of expression for my city. Mm-hmm. And I put a point in this. I got a phone call from Urban League, and there was a friend of our family that was a director there in placement of people for jobs. And he called up and told me that Motorola was about to be picketed by the next day if he's not able to recruit somebody to put in a job in Motorola's, anywhere, any job, so that they could, because they were completely, there were 3 plants and they were all white employees. And they felt that they should show some recognition, since we buy a lot of televisions and buy a lot of electrically wired objects. So I went out and interviewed for the job, and I, of course, got the job because it was going to be a receptionist job, and I had no skills other than sewing, and I had a lot of garments. So they asked me to be a swing shift kind of person. I would go to the different entranceways where the receptionists were there for the salesmen, and relieve them for lunch, break, whatever. So it meant that my face was seen in 3 different plants. Sooner or later, salesmen got to see me, and the heat was off, because Motorola had black person in the lobby, It was funny because one person that I was relieving was a woman who had a 40-year record of working for Motorola. And she's a lovely, lovely, well-dressed, smartly dressed woman. And she was scared to her knees about this young person coming in and taking her job after 40 years of time, because she just decided she was going to stay there till she dropped, and that was cool. And I told her at some point I could see that she was very enticed with me, but she didn't want to lose that job. And I said, Seal, you haven't got a problem to worry about, because I'm only passing through. And I want you to know a secret, and I will share it only with you so that you're comfortable. And that would be that I'm out of here as soon as I can get a shop. And in that fall, I was in Ebony Fashion, my piece was in Ebony Fashion Fair, and I'm on my way. So she said, you're gonna leave? And I said, you got that right, And so I said, you want to help me name the shop? And she said, yeah. And she said, and I'll keep your secret. And so we fooled around with names, and she switched my initials around, and Seal made Elaine Annette Johnson initials to reverse to J. And then I said, now for power, it's going to be J of Hyde Park. I will get a place in Hyde Park, and I will be it in Hyde Park. And so that's how that came about, the name.
So Jay, I want us to also talk about the art that you were making at this time. So you opened that shop in 64.
64.
64. And then we're showing everybody Ebony Family from around 1968. So this is not everyday wear for most people. And I wonder if you could talk about, I don't know if you would even think about it as a shift, but a focus or an emphasis in your work where you started to make work that was more about political statements and positive blackness. If you could tell us a little bit about this piece, and I'm going to show Urban Wall Suit also.
Okay. The point of working with AfriCOBRA, and at that time, when I had the shop, I was single. So I did know that in reverence to my heritage, my grandfather would have been most proud if I was good regarding tailoring. And so I thought that was a good kind of offering, that you have very consistent work and something that can be admired rather than a skirt or jackets separately, sweaters, whatever you can draw up. I decided to make a name for fine tailored things. And what was nice about that is Chicago was cold a lot of times. So this enabled me to work in coding. And I did things that were making coats making suits out of coding. Because Chicago is so cold, these people woolly up all winter long, and you don't even see the garment they're wearing. So I decided to make my suits out of coding so that you could throw a stole on and make it through the winter with bitter cold temperatures, but be able to make very strong and protective suits. Did I lose you?
I wanted you to, you didn't lose me. I want you to say more about the slides that I'm going to show. So Ebony Family, the design for this, we're looking at the front and the back. Maybe you could talk about your idea for the back of it.
Well, this would be once we formed AfriCOBRA. So
Okay,
when we formed AfriCOBRA, I'm doing a whole nother thing because I'm forming an initiative that we've got a revolution going on, and we have to address that. And the best way that Wadsworth and I sort of thought that we could contribute to something like this is if we focused our work in helping this movement to give answers to our people, the obvious kinds of statements that help them celebrate who they are and what they need to protect. And so that was a whole nother ball game.
Okay.
So this is Black Family. It was my estimation at that point, so we had one youngster. He was 2 years old.
I'm going to show the picture of you with your
Well,
kids, too.
That's him at 3 or 4, I think it's 3.
Okay.
But AfriCOBRA decided to do Black Family. This is a very structured thinking that we need to empower our community. And we decided to be examples of that because we had a youngster to protect. And so we weren't going to be out marching. We were going to be in our home as artists, making our expressions to celebrate empowering our people to feel strong. I lost the mic, I think.
It's back. I hear you. I think it's still on, Jay.
Okay. But at any rate, we knew that we had a project to do. And that way we could commit and to protect our family and nourish something that was powerful as an example to our community. So what we do is arm in arm, and we work as a unit. And I always thought, as we heard people make speeches and try to encourage us to get to the streets and bring it all, I said, you look right silly getting a babysitter and going out and marching. You need to do for your child to know that you have the strength of the parents. And we can do some really eye-catching work, and we will do that as an empowerment for our community. And I believed that since AfriCOBRA basically had painters and printers, I'll be the third dimension. Mm-hmm. And so I have a mannequin so I can hang with you.
Could you say just a little bit before we go back to Sylvia Snowden about your inspiration for Urban Wall Suit? And just to clarify that at this time, Jae and AfriCOBRA, and I do want you to say a little bit more a little later about AfriCOBRA, but this is in
sure.
Chicago.
Sure.
So place is important with this story too.
This is Urban Wall Suit. When I started, we were looking at creating even the element that we express our art on. So I thought, since after the shop, I had all these silk pieces, and I wanted to create my work on fabrics that don't come off of bolts, but at the beginning. And so I created my own fabric and patchworked it and then painted on it. And I really was doing the patchwork at some point before I even got to the painting. And then as I was doing it, I had been outside and seen walls in the community, particularly under the viaduct of the IC train, and along the walls well before there was a lot of formal mural painting. Mm-hmm. Wall of Respect was already done, but that was an element in its own. I saw small graffiti under the train tracks as people enter to go into the IC train, which was above, and folks would just write messages, and sometimes they answered messages, and I thought, cool, look at this. So I thought, all it took was some velvet ribbon to make the mortar and break it up and put some of those messages on there. And I'm very freelance and I play with, as you know, humor a lot. But it makes me comfortable and it makes me joyful. And some of the messages were just hip, and they needed to be recorded. It was our language to one another.
Okay. Thank you. There's a lot of stories in those stories.
Yeah.
Okay. So Sylvia Snowden, I have some images of yours that I wanted to show. I wanted to see what you were doing in the 1960s, and so I'm showing early work to start. We're going to get to the more recent work. These are paintings from your MFA show at Howard in 1965, and I wanted you to talk to us about these paintings, what you were thinking about, maybe how you think about them now, what your inspiration was at the time for this art.
I started off painting as a social commentator, and I outgrew that. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I outgrew that, and anyway, it changed. This bulk of work had to deal with the family, the alienation of the family, how important the family is, particularly to African Americans. Though we are told the family is not, the family is our only rock, and there becomes a time that this was done in the 60s when you see the alienation within the family, when you see people at the dinner table who cannot converse, who don't talk to one another. You know, that was, and it's still going on. It's worse now. We're not at the dinner table. We're somewhere else. Do you know, and there's no real sense of family that we had years and years ago. Do you know that it's not the same thing? I mean, you see people who eat on the street. Do you know they just eat, and we eat on the street one way or another. You know, wherever you go, we eat on the street. Do you know? And in this particular series, the difference is I use clothing here. I eliminated the use of clothing in my later work as I matured, and I eliminated the use of hair. The hair just doesn't make any difference. And so I use the body just to convey the feeling. And the style of painting is somewhat the same in the sense that it is what people use the term as expressionistic. And my painting is me. There's the element of me in the painting. Mm-hmm. It's the way I feel in the painting. And it's the use of the brushstroke that comes from within the mind, what you've been taught, and the heart, and it comes out from the hand, comes out from the finger, and it relays you or me, is what I'm talking about, me. And you see the expressionistic brushwork here. But the forms got more simple. And
okay.
Here too, you see
This is from your same show, from that same body of work.
It's about the family. It's still the alienation of the family.
So the alienation of the family. And were you feeling that in 1965, or do you feel that now?
I feel it now and then.
Okay.
Right. Don't you feel it now? Don't you feel it?
I do.
Yeah.
And you feel it with all the homelessness and the people on the street, right? There's a lot of alienation. Mm-hmm. I want to show some other works. This is from a Pen and Ink series, and one of the things I've told you that I enjoy about your work is that you work in series, and not all artists do that. But I wanted to look at some of this work, and I'd like you to tell everyone why it's important for you to work in a series.
Sure. I work in a series, meaning that I do many paintings on the same subject. The use of the same color, the use of the same form. Now, the reason for that is that I try to examine the subject matter in as many ways as I possibly can, so that I can view it from the front, the middle, and the back, and so forth. So therefore, you have various different views. Now, there's one person asked me, who was a critic, asked me, I mean, in a large form, why I painted in series, why can't I just do it in one painting? And I tried my best, that stunned me, Do you know what I mean? That really stunned me. And for somewhere, it came from somewhere. It said, well, why do you write in a paragraph, not just a sentence? You know, I don't know where that came from. I just don't know that saved me that time. You know, do you understand? So it's. And somebody asked me tonight, how did I know when a particular bulk of work was finished? And you know, and we talked. I said, when you know when to put a period at a sentence, you know when that's the end. You've done as much as I could possibly express my understanding of the subject matter. Mm-hmm. And I did people. I moved to a place on M Street, which was the height of the ghetto. And people my background, people just did not understand that. But that was a house that was built in 1871, and that was a house that I could afford.
And this is in Washington, D.C., just for people who don't know.
I did not go down there to embrace poverty. That is not what happened, you know, at all. But I did, and my kids that lived in that house, I still live in that house. Now the whole neighborhood is white, of course, but it's no longer called the ghetto, but it's just the white ghetto. You know, that's all it is. But at any rate, and I did a lot of paintings of the people who live there, and this is Rosetta Williams, and I'll tell you what was so good about it is that my kids socialized and played with all kids, you know, but I did not socialize with the Wild Irish Rose group. That was not my socialization. So the adults and I did not socialize. There was just no reason for it. But I knew them and they knew me. Hello, how you, good, blah, 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 the sun is up, whatever. Do you know that part? And they knew I painted, they knew I did paintings of them. And when the trucks used to come by, because my paintings are large, when the trucks used to come by, and I would write the name, I already had the names of them on the backs of the paintings, so the people who were hanging would know who they were hanging. And so everybody would come out, because of course we are not employed. So that meant when the trucks came, everybody from the block came and watched. Johnny, there you are. There's Susie. Look, there she is. And they took so much pride in the fact that someone was painting them. And I took so much pride in their pride. You know, it made me feel good it made me feel good that they appreciated my effort.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us, you know, sometimes artists say, I can't tell you because I did the painting. If I could tell you, I wouldn't paint. But can you tell us about what's going on with this figure?
Sure, we don't have a pointer.
Wait, I think I do.
Oh, okay.
Well, if we point up here, they can see. Do you want me to point or?
No.
Okay. Here, it's this.
You understand why? Because you wouldn't. It's better for me.
Okay, that's fine.
Where is it? Which one do it?
It's this red button here.
This red button?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now watch where you're going.
Thank you. This is Rosetta Williams. This is from the waist up. And this made use of pen and ink, and this is on board. It's pen and ink and oil pastel and acrylic paint.
Sylvia, use your mic, please.
Sorry, I forget. And this is about, if you look, the red button. Oh, I punched the wrong thing.
That's okay. I got it.
Sorry.
It's okay. Am I going the wrong way? What am I doing?
Rosetta, right.
Okay.
Uh-huh. So I did a lot of women, not because I'm a woman, but I did a lot of women because we have two breasts and the two forms that I could use. Do you understand why a male has one, a penis, that's one, then there are two forms that I could use.
All right, I'm with you. I'm following.
Okay, okay. And this is about the turmoil of Rosetta. And if you, now this is the red, see this, I messed up the owner. No,
Should we go back again? Aaron, can you?
sorry. That one, right.
Thank you.
Now where's the red one?
Just hold this down here. Right there.
Right
There
here?
you go. Press it down.
Okay.
And then point.
Okay, this is her head, thank you.
Thank you.
These are her fingers covering her face. This is one arm here, going down the shoulder. This is one breast, this is another breast. This is the shoulder, and these are the fingers here. I did a lot of things about hands and about how we use hands, how expression. Many times what comes out of our mouths is more expressed with our fingers. How our fingers move will tell us more about what we're saying than the words that come out of our mouth. Because it's much closer to an expression, self-expression.
Okay.
Okay, this is also a female. This is the head here. This is a woman, the shoulders, the fingers here. This is one breast, this is another breast, the arm here. This is the stomach, this is the vagina, this is the thigh, the knee, the leg, the toes here, leg coming up. And this is we as women often, we as people, but we as women often find ourselves exhausted to the point of, we haven't keeled over yet, but it becomes that, do you understand what I mean? And this is what I was trying to portray here. There's still the strength there, but life can be, particularly for women, particularly for black women, can be an exhausting experience. And that's what I was trying to show here.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Not at all. Thank you. Okay. So we're still in the 60s, and I did want to ask Jay if you could say a bit more about the founding of AfriCOBRA, how you became a founding member. And I'm going to list some of the other people, your partner, Wadsworth Jarrell, Jeff Donaldson, Barbara Jones-Hogu, and Gerald Williams. Could you tell us about how you became an organized group and how the significance of collaborating with them influenced your process? And I'm showing Revolutionary Suit as an object that, if you would talk to us about this and its relationship to AfriCOBRA. I know that's a lot of questions.
The revolution was going around on outside. So it wasn't too far away. We lived on 61st, and there was a lot of ramifications of unrest on 63rd on up. So there were things happening that were omitting businesses that they felt wasn't our voice, and our voice was being demanded in the revolutionaries' minds. And it was our neighborhood. I mean, the businesses, we were the ones that were maintaining them by sales and are living nearby. But at some point, there was an attitude to eliminate them. And so at some point, when it got down to, I'm thinking particularly of 63rd Street, which was really shop by shop filled. And there was a need for merchants to put a sign in the window, "I'm black," at some point when they had really ousted and really ran away many of the businesses that were there and prospering on black money. At some point, it was necessary I was doing work for the revolution. So we were hatting up right here with revolutionary suit. The manner was that I would make a very good, well-structured tweed suit and put a bandolier down to let them know that this is serious. It's a serious time. It's a costume, however, it's not for play. And so I just knew that there was a time to act and to have a voice and give an idea of this is serious and we need to think about protecting our own, about saving our communities, about really having the fight in us to give what we could for the revolution.
And instead of bullets in the bandolier, you have colored pastels. Is that right?
Wrong.
Okay.
We had, I just messing with you. I don't do real. If I can't do artistically expressed things, then I don't use Army Navy store surplus. So I did dowelwood and cut them into bullet-like lengths and painted the tips Kool-Aid colors so that you'll know this is AfriCOBRAs at war, and put it in a suede, bold yellow bandolier. Mm-hmm. But it was a tasteful way of being yourself in the workmanship of the suit, the kind of freedom that allows you to march and fight if you had to. But I never lose the element of fashion design and use it just in order to do fine dress to keep us focused on we have work to do.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to show one more example of your work here, Brothers Surrounding Sis from 1970.
Yeah, Brothers Surrounding Sis impressed me because I decided to do, instead of an A-line skirt, to do a paneled skirt. And I thought, what if we know that those in our community are protecting us, that they're shown, I just love those brothers. And they're older, some are younger, they're hanging tough, arms interlocked to protect that sister. Arms interlocked because they're about the same element, the element of success and cutting through some of the disorder that was in our community. So this is an important piece to me because at this point I started doing my seams on the outside. That was in the using of leather and suede. So just so that it was a revolutionary kind of attention-getting structure. So very tiny seams are on the outside, mine are inside out. I like to make sure that we adhered to offering something fresh. And of this, I was quite proud. Because the dude, there were every kind of brothers. Ones that would wife-beater T-shirts and, one of them just bare chest, because he looked kind of strong and good. But these gentlemen, some of them looked mid-age, maybe good 38, 40, you know, hanging with somebody 18 or 19, you know. And they locked arms. That means we have a community that are lending their bodies to this revolution.
So, thank you. We are 15 minutes over time.
Oh,
So what I'm going to do is make an executive decision, and I wanted to fast forward to the work that you're doing most recently, and then we'll open it up for questions.
okay.
So there's obviously more for them to say, but I don't want to just flash right through these. This is work by Sylvia Snowden of people in your community on M Street in Washington, D.C. You have a series, Women of M Street.
The Venuses of M Street.
Okay, the Venuses of M Street, okay.
That's an important word.
Okay,
Important, very important, right.
so the Venuses of M
All
Street.
Black women, M.
M
These are all-
Street,
yeah,
yes,
These are all black women.
okay. And there are more to that series. I just picked two for the sake of time. The Men of M Street, and the men are the men, right? The Venus are the women and the men,
Yes.
okay,
Right.
okay.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you, yeah,
There was another name for that.
yeah. That's fine, yeah, I just want to make sure I got it right. So there's much more to this series also, and I just picked some for the sake of time, just a few. Some of your work is quite large. This work is 9 feet high.
Yes, 9 by 6. I did a series. You know, I'm two things. I'm a mother and I'm a painter, and that's all I am. And I have a deep love and deep feeling for my parents. And I did a large exhibition about the times that were important in their lives. It was at the Women's Museum. And for some reason, this particular painting, the people latched onto, I don't know how that happens, but it just gets carried on and on. And no rhyme or reason to it that I know of. But it's
Well,
anyway.
it's a strong painting. Do you?
Well, I'm not saying, but maybe they all are.
Okay.
Why that one?
I don't know.
Why, do you understand?
I hear you. Yeah.
It has to do with, it has to do with whether somebody's going to spend the time to digitize something else. That's what it has to do with. It
Okay.
really has to do with that print is available. Oh, let me use that. It's
Okay.
a laziness in that.
So you have
too.
many, many strong paintings. This is just
Oh, yeah.
one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also had in the queue, Jay, to show that you work in multiple forms. I wanted to show Going to NYC from 1994, showing some of your creations. Right, so thinking about the urban wall suit here, and then this work from this fabric you use with the jazz scramble. This is you in 2005 with Wadsworth in front of your store in Tribeca. So this is a different store from Jay of Hyde Park. And here you were vintage menswear, furniture, art. Can you say something quickly, and I apologize for asking you to do it quickly, about balancing being an artist and a business owner?
Well, my going to NYC is probably articulate of that. I am the answer to everything regarding me and finances and strength and power in the community is business. And so it's based on the fact that I'm going to get a store doing it. I don't care what. You know, I make cakes, I sell them. If I make can openers, I sell them. I believe it, sell it, whatever, because that is a power broker, and it's important to have a foothold in your community and a handhold. in your community. And business is good and business is worthwhile. I've got a zillion 3-year businesses, but I did it, you know, and I was in an address and it was there, and it's right on going to NYC. My bakery had 2 of them, you know. Dry goods, got it. I've done, that big store there is a 2,000 square foot store in Tribeca of vintage menswear and collectibles for gentlemen. And New York loves that kind of stuff. But regular people are in theater, they want it, but also folks wear it on a regular occasion, especially if it's classic dress. So I believe in stores.
Okay. I just wanted to show, and we're wrapping up, this incredible work from 2015, your jazz scramble jacket.
Mm-hmm. That is, okay, the fingers start getting nimble. Okay, they were nimble, they are numb. They get in a position with a needle, they get jammed together like they can get stuck, like, just like that. And you find yourself trying to pull them apart. That's what 83 does to you. So, hey, what I do is I glue it now. I build it.
You just get it done another way.
Yeah, I can get it done another way. But I glued so much until at some point them fumes are getting in the good old brain. And I'm going to have to pick up a hammer and do the rest. So that's where my head is now.
I want to show 2 last images for you, Jae, before I get to Sylvia Snowden. These are towers.
These are towers that I've made from vintage screens that I've taken their legs and I've, you know, the screens are really quite low, so they need some high heel sneakers. So I build them up some, you know, and I frame my old works. So I'm saying, so long, Sappy, and that's fine. I've been there, done that, and I'm moving on. And I'm now in wood and nails and stuff.
Okay. This is another example of this most recent work.
Yeah, so I take my pieces that are classic and frame them. And my tower will hold them well and celebrate them well.
Thank you. I'm going to show a few slides. Oh, there's this stunner.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
ornaments of
Every time I
reflection.
try to get out of this sewing, somebody comes along with a whole nother order, and this is the one that's in the Toronto Biennial that I got asked to do this time. So this time I stuck it and glued it to the mannequin and sold them the mannequin and all. That's it. It's out, you know.
And that's this year. This is very
Yeah, that's
recent.
just about 2 months ago. My show was just a
Okay.
month ago. But there's a point where you have to say no and move on. Your expressions need to move on as you move on, and there's much more to do. So.
Okay, thank you. I just have a few images of Sylvia Snowden's work to represent some of the most recent things that you're doing. If you could talk to us a bit about what you want to express in your work today. And we didn't talk about texture. I think texture is really important for both of your works. You both make things that people want to reach out and touch. Mm-hmm. Maybe, Sylvia, if you could speak a little bit about texture when you're talking about the significance of this recent work.
I am interested in using very thick paint. I am a painter, and I use thickness to pigment in order to make the paint thicker, and it never gets too thick for me. It never takes a long time for it to dry, but it never gets too thick for me. And I'm interested in showing how the brushwork can make one feel differently. Now, this particular one, I used cans with a lot of series. I just did a whole series on nothing but the use of cans.
Are these cans like soda cans, or they're...
I drink a lot of Red Bull. Those I save the cans from the Red Bull,
All right.
and I use them.
Okay, I know now. Yeah, I didn't realize that these were actual cans.
There were all cans that I drank out of, all of these, all cans that I use.
Okay.
Right. There's a relationship, between everything that I use in me. It's not just somewhere out of the air. Somewhere, it's not that. Then I had so many cans of what to do with them. So I did a whole series of things using cans.
Okay. And can you tell us about how large this is?
Yeah, that's about 8 feet by maybe 4 feet.
Okay.
This is, I like people.
Okay.
I do like people, and I like to paint people. Now, that does not mean that everything I say about a person you might not see as good or liking somebody. But we are filled with so many different things, and I enjoy seeing the same thing. And we all have the same sort of feeling. We all do. Now, there's a difference in proportion. Whatever your jealousy might be this much, and mine might be that much. Do you understand? But it's there. It's there. And I like to see people, and I like to interact with people, and I like to paint people, and I like to paint the humanness in people. I just enjoy the fleshiness of people and the fleshiness of the paint and the way I paint. That embodies all that I feel about human beings, about people. And this is about us as a person, and the way we seek so many things, and this is about the search. And we're all searching. Sometimes we're born with searching for something, or one thing or another. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do appreciate you coming, and I do appreciate being invited here, and it was quite an honor. And people have been very nice to me, and I speak for Jay too. And we both are very happy that you invited us, and thank you.
Well, we're honored that you're here. Thank you for your time. Okay, so we are going to take some questions, maybe 2 or 3. Is Chelsea here? How many questions can we take?
About 2 or 3. We also have a reception outside.
Okay. So just a few questions, and then we'll all be going out. If you want to ask them individual questions there, they might be willing to speak with you. So we have microphones on either side, and it's being recorded, so please go ahead and wait for the mic. A question for either of our esteemed, terrific, amazing guests.
Jay, could you tell us a little bit about how AfriCOBRA came together as a group?
Oh, yes. Wadsworth and Jeff Donaldson had a chat early on when they were at art fairs. And I think Jeff mused that, wonder what it would be like to have a group of artists concerned about getting together, sharing, and with a vision and message for our people. And that didn't come into effect until we actually had a revolution. Can you hear? And at some point, it was necessary to simply come meet and share ideas. And we started doing that on a regular basis every Sunday. And some people said thanks, but no thanks, because you have to check your ego at the door. It's off again, I think.
It's going on and off, but you should go ahead. They can hear
Okay.
you.
So at some point, it narrowed down to those of us who really wanted to form it. We were sincerely invested, and from the standpoint that we knew, see, we thought we were hot, we were sort of hot dogs, and we sort of knew we were going to conquer the world anyhow, and so if we did it collaboratively, it was powerful. And so that was how the five of us decided to to form a union. And it took a while before, we just simply would come every Sunday and chat about conditions and share ideas of what was going on around the world. And at some point, we were doing that for almost 2 years. And that somebody offered us a show, a program on television to interview us. And we had to really quick, like a bunny, make a piece. And we decided the black family was the most important thing to share right off the bat. And so that was done in time enough for that interview. And it was a good jump-off point.
Thank you.
Thank you both for this wonderful conversation tonight. My question is for Sylvia. With the works that you based off of your neighbors on M Street, would they sit for you? Were you painting after models? Okay, right. So these are impressions? Okay.
No. I don't use models that way. When I finished school, that was the end of models. So it's not that. That took enough life drawing to understand the body.
So then what kinds of impressions or memories, or how did you formulate these figures when you were painting them, and what drove you to kind of represent them in the way that you did?
Now, what was the first part? How?
What did you remember?
Now let him tell me.
Okay.
You understand? He's the one asking.
Yes, let him speak. Yeah.
I guess I'm wondering if you didn't paint after models, right? What were some of the impressions or memories?
Just like I could do a painting of you.
Yes.
Now, not from these questions, but when our long talk before this,
Yes.
there are things that I formulated about you as a person. I understand certain things and accept certain things about you as a person. And I can paint that, if I chose to. I can paint that. Do you know? I can paint that. Based on my understanding of what the human figure is and what to do with it to show what I think I know of you. Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone have a last question before we go to the reception?
I have a question to Jay. Thank you very much for your talk, and you spoke so inspiringly about revolution and about how art can be a tool and instrument to empower community. But my question is that any revolution, it's also have a moment of frustration when what you fight for is not coming out as you want, and probably even those who are fighting with you together turn against your common cause. Have you experienced such a moment, and what gave you a power to move forward over them?
I'm not quite understanding.
I mean that revolution can have a different side. when it is not only moving forward, but it also meets a resistance within that movement. And it's combined with frustration. And did you have such moments, and how did you overcome them, if you have them?
Does that make sense, Jay? So I think your question is about when you're in a revolutionary group, you're fighting for revolution.
Yeah.
It's the revolution, the transformation you're hoping for isn't coming about, you're frustrated. How do you keep going as a revolutionary artist?
You don't give up. You know, it's your vision, and you are a dreamer far beyond those observers. I mean, you wish, you know, you going downtown to Sally Annie's, you know, and cut that butter good. You don't, you know, you're the artist, and your mission is to put it out there. You should feel comfortable that you've made a contribution, and that it isn't as though you're going to suit up in a revolutionary suit and be able to conquer all. But you are giving impressions that you can participate. You must find your slot. What do you do in the community to contribute to our situation? Who do you amass with? And we've done it in a voice that is beautiful because it's art. And it's lovely. You're included in the images. So therefore, that's a revolution, because you've seen art before where you have not been represented. And so there is a communication that you've earned a friend. It's not about really fighting. It's about acknowledging, because all too often things occur that we don't step up and speak out. But it does mean that you can collaborate with do-good kinds of community efforts. And that did happen in that, particularly that Woodlawn community that I was living in. People were trying to learn things by going to the adult evening schools, and folks were volunteering and coming in and doing things where they help empower those people to do some of the projects they wanted to do. But that's what it's about. It's about forming your army of positivity, uplift, rise and take control. It's all power driven and makes people get up and not be sleepy about the fight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.